One of my favorite boutique labels, Arrow Video, has recently put out a quite awesome deluxe limited edition release of the 2009 war film directed by Quentin Tarantino, Inglourious Basterds. Now, this is a 2009 war film. It is kind of an alternate history war film that it takes place during World War II, but it kind of like Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it kind of reinvents the actual historical events that take place. This is Quentin Tarantino's sixth film. He has claimed in the past he's only going to direct 10 films. Right now he's at number 9, so the next film that he makes is expected to be his last. That is, if you count Kill Bill Part 1 and 2 as two separate films, which generally people do, and Tarantino himself seems to count them as two separate films. Now, if you would do me a favor and go ahead and like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Brace yourself. In this video, I'm going to talk about my impressions of the film. We're going to talk about the 4K transfer. We're going to eventually going to pop open this thing here. We're going to show you the packaging here and all the good stuff inside of here. And eventually, I'm going to rate the film on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. So my impression of this now, upon rewatching this film, I think this is probably Quentin Tarantino's one of his best films. If I'm going to say that, I still say Pulp Fiction to me is his best film, but this one's probably his second best film to me anyway. I think that a lot of tolerance of this film is going to depend on if you can handle reading subtitles, because there is quite a bit of scenes that involve subtitles, and the film itself is, I think on the first watch of it, I did appreciate it, but I think I appreciated it even more on this watch. There are three main characters. There's three different protagonists. I guess one of them's kind of a villain in a way, but there's three major characters that it focuses on three different parts of the film, and in a way, it's a little bit of an ensemble because all three of them kind of share equal screen time, and they're rarely on the screen together. Brad Pitt plays Lieutenant Aldo Rain, who is also known as Aldo the Apache. He's the leader of the Inglourious Basterds. And he is not necessarily, he is a major character, but he gets top billing here, but he's not necessarily the main character, but he does do Brad Pitt's really awesome in this one. I think it's a very understated performance. I think a lot of people were more surprised by some of the other performances, but the more times I've seen this, the more I appreciate Brad Pitt's. He plays a Tennessee. He's from Tennessee, and he's an army lieutenant here, and he's in charge of this Inglourious Basterds, and he's just he plays it quite hilarious. And the whole thing of the Bastards is he sends them out to go and hunt Nazis. They're Nazi hunters, and when they catch them, they typically will after they kill them, they cut their scalps off, so they're collecting their scalps. That's why he's called the Apache. But Christoph Waltz plays an SS officer who's a major character in here, and he's like kind of a detective. He's very good at figuring people out, and he's constantly, when you see him, he's questioning people. Now, one thing this film does, in the opening scene of this film, it basically starts off with his character, and it lasts about 20 minutes, and he comes in and he's kind of interrogating a guy who's got a bunch of Jews hidden under the floorboard of his house, and he kind of knows this to begin with, or he suspects it, and he comes into his house and he kind of questions the guy for a good 20 minutes, and it's a very entertaining scene, and it's a good way to establish this character. Now, this scene reminds me of the way that the character, the bad character, is introduced in The Good and the Bad and the Ugly. There's a very similar scene where he comes into this guy's house and he questions him, but it's in general, this whole film kind of has this kind of spaghetti type of Western feel to it as well, especially the way that scenes are staged. And they're like this scene, for instance, he comes in and interrogates the guy, and a very, very tense build up throughout the scene while you're watching it. And that happens several times throughout the movie. There's a lot of setup, like there's a tavern scene later on where these like a British soldier played by Michael Fassbender and two of the Inglourious Basterds, not Brad Pitt's character, but they go into this tavern to meet a spy who's an actress, but they go in to meet her, and there's like that's a very long scene, but there's often very long scenes like this that have a major payoff by the end of the scene, which is quite amazing the way that it works. But it is very similar in the deliberate pacing to a spaghetti western, which I really appreciate, and really I really appreciate all the performances in this movie. And the third main character, played by Mélanie Laurent, she plays Shoshana Dreyfus. I think that's how you pronounce the character's name, but she's a French Jewish. At the beginning of the movie, when Christoph Waltz's character is interrogating the guy, like she's one of the girls hiding under the house, and she ends up escaping. And then now in present day time, she owns like a movie theater in France, and that's where basically the story takes place. And what happens in the main part of the movie, there's these little sub things going on. The main part of the movie involves this. They're putting on this kind of propaganda German film, and there's a guy who is in the film, and he's also like was a guy who killed a bunch of U.S. soldiers, a bunch of French people or whatever. But he's kind of considered a hero by the Germans, and so they're all wanting to come see this film. And so there's an assassination attempt, a plot done by the character played by Mélanie Laurent, Sosha. She is running the theater, but then she finds out that they're going to show the movie there, and there's going to be all these high-ranking German officers there, and so she starts to kind of come up with a way to kill them all. And at the same time, the bastards are doing their own. They find out about it, and that's when they catch on, and then they're part of another team of people who are going to come in and into this theater and try to assassinate these high-ranking German officials. And that's kind of how most of the plot is set up. It's about this movie theater thing, but there are some tangents that happen before which establish the characters and some of the events and the backstories, which is done very well. Now, as far as the transfer of this film, there is a previous version of this that was put out on 4K by Universal, and I've got it here, and it's got a pretty nice slipcover. But I think the transfer here is slightly different encode on the transfer. What I can tell, I don't think there's much difference. It might be kind of the same transfer, just a different encode. I did see a lot of people on this initial release here complaining about the transfer, and I was trying to understand what was going on with it that they were so upset about. This movie was shot on film, but it was edited. It was edited digitally, and it was mastered to 2K. And so what they had to do, because they have a 2K master of this, they don't have a film master, so they had to basically take the 2K master and kind of upgrade it to 4K. And so I think some people were very upset about this, but they didn't really have much of another choice unless they re-edited the whole film, which they're not going to do, But maybe they might do eventually. But it would look a little better probably if they re-edited the whole film and then mastered it to film. But I think though this transfer, even though it is a 2K upgrade to 4K, I think it still looks fantastic. I mean, when I'm watching it, I'm seeing the textures and these officers' uniforms and the skin, the close-ups of the people's faces. You see a lot of detail in the skin. The colors, just in general, they just pop out. Even when you look at people's hair, everything looks fantastic. Now, I guess if you got the bigger the screen, the less kind of detail you might see. But I think there's a lot to see here. And as far as the way that it is shot, very cinematic, by the way. And if you watch a spaghetti western, it's shot in a similar type of fashion, which I really love about the film. This film's fantastic, I gotta tell you. But it's sometimes like the skin tones are quite natural, typically throughout the film. Now, a lot of the scenes they're dealing with tungsten lighting on the interior, so there is a kind of a little bit of a yellowish tint to the skin tones when they're in some of the interior locations, which was natural. When they're outside, everything looks very naturally a little bit blue, like it would outside, the skin tones and things of that nature. But now the black levels are quite satisfying in general. You see a lot of details in the shadow. I think there's a lot of clarity throughout the film. It all, there is you do see the film grain. This film this film was shot on film, so the film grain is there. It's not an overabundance of film grain. There's not a wall of film grain to see through. If you start really looking for the film grain, you will see it a lot more. But usually when you're watching the film, you don't even think about it. But if you intentionally do look for the film grain, you'll see it. It's definitely there, and it's as it should be. Now the HDR here in the 4K is a fantastic added value. It really brings out the colors and the faces and all the in general, it brings out the colors so much better. HDR, just can't say enough about it. But let's go ahead and take a look at this release. Here, I've kept the plastic on it in an attempt to keep the HDR sticker on there. Now, this is a bit of, it's kind of hard to get this out of here, but it came out maybe a little easier than I thought it would. I had trouble with it in the past. On the inside of it, we have a slip box, and it says War Office Operation Kino. So that's the operation that the Inglourious Basterds and the British officers, played by Michael Fassbender, are sent on this mission. What's interesting, there's a cameo by Mike Myers in here, who plays Austin Powers and Wayne from Wayne's World, but he's one of the guys giving him the assignment, and he's got some makeup on, so he's almost unrecognizable, but it's kind of cool that Quentin Tarantino got Mike Myers in his film. I really like Mike Myers anyway. On the inside of this, so here's the slip box, very very nice slip box. We have some goodies here. Here's the actual, this, if you order the standard definition, which is out now, you'll basically get this right here. And we'll take a quick peek at everything that's included with that, which I may not get the cards, and I'm unsure on that one. But here we got a 4K disc, and there's also a Blu-ray disc, which is rare for an Arrow release. But this Blu-ray disc only has the extras on it. We'll take a peek. We'll take a peek at these cards. Here's Michael Fassbender's character and Diane Kruger's character, the spy. And here is Mélanie Laurent's character. Here's Christoph Waltz character, the SS officer. Now this is when she goes to, like, there's a lot of other westerns where this sort of thing happens, but when Mélanie Laurent's character is trying to escape at the beginning, she starts running, and he takes his gun out and he's pointing it at her, and you think he's just going to shoot her and she's going to die, but he ends up not shooting her. Here's some recipe. It says apple strudel recipe. So there's an apple strudel recipe in here, which is an interesting thing. Now this is here's a card just for The Cell, which is a recent Arrow release, and I did a review on that one, which I think it turned out pretty good. And here's the film within the film of the German propaganda film, and that's the character who is in the film. And then here's some more German propaganda stuff. Yeah, that's a pretty cool little flyer. All right, so let's take a look at these other items that are included here. We have a poster. This is a double-sided poster. We have the new artwork, which is on the cover here, which I think is a pretty cool silhouette. And on the back side, you have the original artwork for the film, which has all the characters in which I like. I really like both of them. I think they're pretty strong posters both ways. There is a coaster here for your drink. This is from the tavern in the film. It is from the La Louisiane Tavern. And then finally, there is a booklet in here with lots of information about the film. There's pictures. There's Diane Kruger. There is Quentin Tarantino. And it's got essays in here about the film. And we're going to take a quick look at the back of it. Now, there's not a lot of information about the presentation of the film, but here's what it says about the presentation. Inglourious Basterds is presented in its original aspect ratio of 2:39:1 with 5.1 sound. As far as the sound in this, I didn't touch on that before. I just watched it. I don't have a badass sound system or anything like that. I usually watch things on mono with subtitles. And there's subtitles within this film already because there's like some foreign language being spoke within the film, some German language or French, kind of both maybe. But I thought it sounded fine. I thought I could hear everything as far as I could tell, but at the same time I had subtitles on, so if I wasn't hearing it, I was reading it. So I don't know. It sounded good to me in general. It says the 1080p/4K HDR master was supplied by NBC Universal. So that makes me think it's the same transfer as the previous release. I would say if you're a big fan of this film like I am, I would recommend getting this deluxe limited edition release from Arrow because of the packaging itself is amazing. Not to say I do like the simplicity of the previous release. I do like this slipcover. That is a nice looking slipcover. So it's kind of a hard call. There's also a lot of extras included on here. There's a disc that has like a boatload of extras on it. It's like all this from here to here. It's all about how many extras on there. So it's quite a lot of extras. So it's worth it for the extras and just for the deluxe packaging. Now there is a very brutal scene in the film here, and if you look on the back of this one, there's a bat, and it's almost like it's a pre-Negan from The Walking Dead scene. The same sort of thing happens. So they call this character the Bear Jew, and they have a high-ranking SS officer, and the bastards have him, and they're trying to get some information from him. And then the Bear Jew, played by Eli Roth, which is an awesome casting. Eli Roth being a director, I love it when being a director myself, I love it when directors bring other directors in and they have them act in the scene. And Eli Roth is very convincing as this Bear Jew, and he comes out with a bat, and he eventually just beats the shit out of this guy's head, just very similar to what Negan does in The Walking Dead. And this was before even Negan appeared in the comics of The Walking Dead. Is it a coincidence? I don't know. Probably so, maybe. But the bat's only used here briefly in that one scene. But in The Walking Dead, there was a lot more to it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and rate the film. I'm going to rate the film itself a 4.5 stars. I really think that this is a terrific Tarantino film. And there is a lot of a very huge amount of what I would consider dark comedy, but it's quite hilarious in itself, but not in a. Sometimes when people hear the word dark comedy, they jump to like thinking it's like comedy, but this is like it's just very more of a subtle, and it's also very dark and things that happen. And the performances here, Christoph Waltz is in a kind of a villainous type of character. He has a different type of. He kind of has a turn near the end of the film, which is quite amazing. And Brad Pitt, even though some people might consider it not to be that deep of a character, I do like the way he commits to it, and it's quite hilarious to me. I really think that the way, especially like the Inglourious Basterds get in a situation near the end, and they're having to dress up and act like they're Italian filmmakers, and that's hilarious. It's like, and then Christoph Waltz's character comes up and figures it out pretty quick, but he pretends like he doesn't know, and he tries to get them to speak Italian, and it's such a freaking hilarious scene. As far as what Arrow has done here with this, I'm going to also give them 4.5 stars. I'm just going to give them 4.5 stars because I don't want to give them 5. But I think, clearly the transfer is not their fault, and the transfer itself is good. I don't know if they could do anything else. Like I say, I don't think anything else beyond re-editing the whole film and then exporting it to film. But as far as like the transfer, like I said earlier, I think it is a fantastic transfer. I think it looks terrific. And if you will do me a favor and go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel. I'm Dave Watkins. Thanks for watching.